Well, hey everybody, it is Romania Black, and we are on episode 21 of Dororo, and we're down to the last four episodes, 21, 22, 23, 24, yeah, last four episodes. What could happen? What could happen? I don't know, but episode 19 was such a little joy. It was so great. And I was like, oh, ha ha, will everything go downhill? And then episode 20 was just a bloodbath, a literal bloodbath. And I was like, oh. And so we've left poor Hyakkimaru with this demon heart seemingly. And he's like, I got to go straight to Daigo. I got to get to the bottom of these things. We've got to just solve all the things and get to the bottom of it. And I don't blame him. I don't blame him, honestly. So... oh, y'all, I don't know what we're going to do, but I'm definitely excited about this episode because I feel like we're leading into the final arc, but I don't know what to expect. And I honestly, I couldn't wait. So after episode 20, I waited a couple days and I was like, I really want to watch episode 21. I hope that's okay. But with that being said, we know we have to face Daigo, and I think that Hyakkimaru is going to face Tahomaru again. And I really want Hyakkimaru to talk with his mom. I'd really love Tahomaru to talk to his mom. I feel like the mom has been kind of like shoved to the side, and I feel bad for her. Then Daigo has to bear maybe some responsibility in all of this, you know, since it's kind of his fault to begin with. But I don't know. I don't know what we're going to be doing these last four episodes, but I'm kind of excited to see where it's going to go. So... we'll just have to see. But I want to give a really quick shout out before we start over to our philanthropy tier over on Patreon to thank you all so much for supporting me and supporting the channel. I want to give a shout out to Alex Cornejo, to Anime Annie, to Be Happy, to Bryant Reed, to Dana, to Damage3245, as well as Devorin, Destiny Marie, Danger Zone, Ichu, Eric, Fisho, Ghostly Turnip, Elfreya, Liam Posel, Lyndon, Matthew Palfinier, Murphew, Nago, Nicholas, Adam Perez, Alexandra Q, as well as Sunspots, Shimoyama, Trails, Translucent Men, and Starman AA. And Bisa, of course, Bisa. How could we forget Bisa? But thank you all so much for your support. I greatly appreciate it. All of my love. So I'm bringing good vibes. Maybe. Maybe to all of this. We'll see. We'll see if good vibes get brought in on this, but we're not going to waste any more time. There are two ads because of course there are, but they're towards the middle and end of the episode, so you know how that goes. But we're going to start this here in 3, 2, 1, and let's do it to it. Remember when things were nicer? Remember when things were nicer? Remember when we had nice things? No, not with Dororo. Man, Hyakkimaru makes it hard to love him, right? I have been a Hyakkimaru defender from the beginning, and I have defended Hyakkimaru so much, but he does not make it easy to be on his side. He is so stubborn. Him and Tahomaru are so stubborn. They are the most stubborn of stubborns. And for Hyakkimaru to be a protagonist, he really is hard to love. And you want to so badly, but he makes it difficult sometimes. And this episode was so difficult because one thing I love about this series is that everyone is coming from a place where they have something they're fighting for, they have something they're arguing for, and you can see from their perspective why they're doing the things that they're doing. You may not like it, but you can see why they're doing the things that they're doing. And that makes this really hard, right? So we're going to talk about this episode. But I don't know. Hyogo and Mutsu look like they might be out of commission because Hyogo's swinging arm was literally chopped off and they're not regrowing arms anytime soon. And Hyogo has the plague, which I'm worried about. I wondered I wonder if Mitsu was going to get sick and not be able to fight and it was going to lead them to get killed. They didn't get killed, but I wonder if it's like going to impede on them getting better because of the sickness. So I'm not feeling very fun about that or confident about that. I don't like where that's headed. They've kidnapped Dororo, of course, because as if Hyakkimaru wasn't already headed that direction, now Hyakkimaru is going to be speed running there to go get Dororo. So that's not good. That's not good. And Dororo has been the voice of reason for Hyakkimaru. So is Hyakkimaru going to jump on this demon horse and ride in like through the gates of hell. If he didn't look like a demon before, he's really gonna look like a demon riding in on a flaming horse. So, although justice for Midoro, that horse, unnecessary. The trauma that happened to that horse, unnecessary. So we get the flashback of last week, and Dororo being like, what's your rush? Why are you going this way to go after your body? And Dororo's like, well, obviously I'm on my way. We get the Asuka and then the Asakura scouts, their flag, that are fighting Daigo. So there's about to be a war breaking out, right? And Hyakkimaru's biggest problem is that he's so tunnel visioned and he's so narrow focused on what's right in front of him, and it's the most simple thing. It's part of the things that you like about Hyakkimaru. He's very simple and straightforward, but it's to a fault in this series where Hyakkimaru, all he thinks about is getting his body back, and because he wants to be with Dororo, and that's amazing and that's beautiful and that's great. It's so simple and great, but the problem is that Hyakkimaru is ignoring the rest of the world, and the rest of the world is still turning and still going, and they're very impacted by him. And Hyakkimaru is not willing to recognize that and deal with that. He's just like, nope, just gonna get my body, not worrying about everything else going on. And I'm like, but everything else going on is important and has to do with you. So it's very concerning. So anyway, we see the spy. We find out who he is. He was a spy for Daigo that has told Daigo about Hyakkimaru. So the episode is called The Story of Breaking the Cycle of Suffering. And I don't know if we broke the cycle of suffering in this episode. I don't think we did that at all. I don't think we broke the cycle of suffering whatsoever. I feel like things are still really bad. And so we need to talk about this. But Daigo is getting ready for war. He has to lead his troops against the Asakura. And so things are not looking great. There's an epidemic that's spreading around. People are getting sick. They don't have enough troops. Things are looking pretty grim for Daigo in comparison to how it was at the beginning of the series. And the Asakura, have been advancing on them, and Daigo and them. It's interesting that the way that Tahomaru paints Daigo and the way that he is painted in this series, Tahomaru makes it seem like as long as his dad's around, everything's going to be hunky-dory and everything's going to be prosperous. And it's like, it is for you all. But all the other surrounding countries are pissed at Daigo because he's kind of just been like, I'm good, screw you guys. And now it's like, it's all coming back to bite him. So it's interesting to see, and you can't blame Tahomaru for the way that he thinks, but it's interesting the way that Daigo has been painted and has seared itself into Tahomaru's mind versus how we know him. That, he's done these things for the kingdom. He technically saved Hyogo and Mutsu and has done these things and raised Tahomaru, but he's also a terrible person. And that kind of goes, to our own real life, that there are people that are influential that are terrible people. And what do you do about that? The thing about it to me is that Daigo, the worst part about his character, the worst part about his character, part one, is he's terrible to his wife. His wife is like, she's spitting truth bombs out here. He's like, silly woman, and like gaslighting her the whole time. And I'm like, she's been nothing but right for 90% of the show. And he doesn't respect her. He likes her and loves her enough, you can tell, but he's just kind of terrible to her. And it's like, But the other thing is that he does not take responsibility. And so he knows that, as his wife has told him, the land's screwed. They can kill Hyakkimaru. It's not going to change the fact that they're all doomed anyway. And he won't tell his son that. He would let his son go off and fight his other son to the death before he would admit that he knew it wouldn't make a difference. And that's the worst part about it. Like, Tahomaru is justified in how he thinks, and the mom is justified in how she thinks, and she's told him as such, and he chooses to not accept it and not tell others, which I'm like, I wish Tahomaru would just talk to his mother. I wish he would just talk to her and have her spill the truth to him, and then he could make an educated decision. But because it's like the one miscommunication in this series that could solve all of our problems, I mean, I say that. He may listen to what she says and not do. He may just do like Daigo and just throw it completely aside and not care. But there is a part of me that's like, if Tahomaru knew that fighting Hyakkimaru was going to do nothing, it would make no difference, then I think he would focus his energies on other ways to help his people rather than hunt his brother down. Right? I want to know what he did in the Hall of Hell. Did he just look at the demon statue and leave? Did he make a deal with it when Hugo and Mitsu weren't there? I feel like we're going to come back to that demon statue at some point, but anyway, so the days of prosperity in this land are over. So meanwhile, we have all of these different villages on fire. I'm pretty sure, aren't these Daigo's men that are shooting people as they come out of the houses? Aren't these the same men, I feel, that are doing all of this? Because they're trying to get all the people who are drafted as soldiers. Yeah, they basically killed the deserters and got the people and drafted the people into the army, which is essentially, it's different than what happened with Hyogo and Mitsu from the start. It's adjacent to their experience. So it's one of those moments where you understand why characters are doing the things they're doing. The tragedy is it's not much different than what happened to them. Again, it's the cycle of violence, the cycle of suffering. It's just going through the motions, repeating, rinse and repeat, just to a different beat. And you're on the opposite side now instead of before, right? So this scene with the horse, Midoro, the finest horse, she had that little colt that was left behind. My parents used to have horses when I was very little. We had an old mare named Misty, who's named after the Pokemon gym leader, and she had a colt named Witchy because she was very rambunctious. But Misty was a sweet old mare. She was like in her 20s, I think. Well, she lived to be in her 30s, but she was an old mare. She didn't run. She could just walk and maybe get a little bit of speed to her. But the very first thing I learned about horses is you never walk behind them. Ever. You never walk behind a horse because they will kick you and they will not hesitate to do so. And the other thing is horses are very special. You have to develop a relationship with horses. Horses want to develop, they're very interesting creatures. They want to develop a relationship with you, and there has to be trust. You cannot just grab a horse by the reins and be like, you're going to obey me. No, horses are stubborn, and horses take time to communicate with, to train, to get to do what you want them to. There is a process. Once you do that process, they're good to go. They remember, they will follow through. But you can't just walk up to a horse and be like, I'm going to own you. No, that's not how they work. And they will, quite frankly, they know that they are bigger than you and can hurt you. And this guy getting kicked by the horse, by Midoro, he frankly deserved that. That was, the one guy finally got to tame her, but then they blew her up. I was like, of all the horses to blow up, why didn't you blow up one of them nasty sorrel ones? That was just like off to the side, one of those common horses. Why'd you blow up the really beautiful? What was the point of going and getting this beautiful horse if you were just going to blow her up? How dare you, sir? What a waste of horse. I was offended at their treatment of Midoro. If she comes back as a horse demon from hell and lights their whole place on fire, they deserve it for treating her so horribly. Leaving this poor mare away from her colt, taking her away, tossing bombs to her, shooting her. They shot their own horse in the ass to make her move faster. Like, the mistreatment of Midoro. Justice for Midoro. Hashtag justice for Midoro. I was insulted by how they treated her. So anyway, Daigo goes in there and they find it's Hyakkimaru. And Tahomaru's like, I'll go and battle him. And here's the thing. Daigo's children, both of them, Hyakkimaru and Tahomaru, they are both stubborn to a damn fault. They are the most stubborn brothers of all anime brothers. They are the most stubborn anime brothers. And the mom says it about Tahomaru and the mom says it about Hyakkimaru. They're like, well, once they've decided to do something, I guess there's no stopping them. I'm like, you... Parenting 101. A part of me gets really angry that Daigo was willing to sick his son on his other son when all of this is his fault. I get really irked when characters don't take responsibility for their actions. I get irked when people in real life don't take responsibility for their actions. And so Daigo pisses me off. I'm like, I just want him to take responsibility, damn it. And he's not doing it. He's like, well, and Tahomaru's like, as long as I have Hyogo and Mutsu with me, I'll dispel them. Otherwise, we'll never be able to govern this land in peace. And Daigo hears all that and is like, well, even though I know that that's not entirely true because we're screwed anyway, go, my son. And I was like, ah! And the thing is now, what I'm worried about, as we have 3 episodes left, is that we don't have Hyogo and Mutsu. I don't think they're going to be able to help fight. And I don't know how Tahomaru is going to fight Hyakkimaru on an even playing field, because Hyakkimaru is going to be pissed. He's going to want Dororo. He's going to probably ride in on a horse from hell. And it's like, how are you going to fight that? So I'm worried that Tahomaru is in his moment of weakness. I'm worried that Tahomaru in his moment of weakness, if he doesn't have Mitsu and Hyogo by his side, he's going to have a moment of weakness. And you know what he's going to do? He's going to do the exact same thing his dad did. He's going to go to the Hall of Hell and he's going to make a deal with that last demon and be like, will you help me to kill Hyakkimaru? And the demon's going to be like, oh, what? Yes. And now maybe that's not what Daigo wanted, but Daigo's led all this stuff to happen. And I'm like, I hope that's not the case. But after this episode, I don't see any way that Tahomaru can fight Hyakkimaru without assistance. I just don't. Tahomaru is not as driven. He's driven to save his people, but he is not as driven as Hyakkimaru. Hyakkimaru's drive is not just to save Dororo and have Dororo with him, but it is a instinctual base primal level of he just wants his body back. And that kind of supersedes a lot of these other drives that these characters have, which is wild to me. So anyway, Dororo finally questions. He's like, if we reach Daigo, what if your mother and father get involved? And Hyakkimaru says, if they get in my way, I will kill. And what I wanted in that moment was I wanted Dororo to look at Hyakkimaru and be like, hey, from one actual orphan to a pseudo orphan, let me tell you, don't take your parents for granted. And granted, Daigo is terrible, but I feel like I wanted Dororo to tell Hyakkimaru in that moment, like, you have an actual family. They may be kind of the worst and not accepting of you, but they are still family. And, I'm over here without that. So I can kind of speak to experience of what it's like to lose that, and I feel like I wanted Dororo to kind of talk about their parents didn't do some things that were maybe great, in the past, but they're still their parents. And I feel bad about it because I feel like I wanted Dororo to say something in that moment as someone that's lost their parents, and our flashbacks we've gotten of them has been kind of sort of integral to that. And I think maybe that's going to come up. I think it's going to come back up maybe, especially since Dororo's been kidnapped and possibly taken to Daigo. I think when Hyakkimaru shows up, Dororo's going to have that conversation. But there is a part of me that kind of sides with Hyakkimaru in that I feel bad because Hyakkimaru, when he looks at Dororo and he's like, they called me a demon. Why would a brother call me a demon? And it's really sad because Dororo does not want to believe that Hyakkimaru is a demon, and Dororo is supporting Hyakkimaru, but everything Hyakkimaru is doing is making him more and more like a demon. And so I wonder if there's going to be some point where Dororo's like, well, you are acting like a demon, so what else do we call you? And I keep waiting for that moment to happen, and we got 3 episodes left, so I don't know if we're going to get it, so I guess we shall see. And then Dororo's like, but then, if you kill your family, who will you have? And Hyakkimaru's like, well, I'll have you. And Dororo's like, well, I can't argue with that, and that's really nice, but I don't want to... Dororo needs to be like, I don't want to be your brother if you're going to be a demon. Like, you need to stop, right? It's just, it's so sad. Speaking of sad, we get Hyogo and Mitsu's backstory. And so in the backstory, here's the thing. The samurai that showed up and took them away, weren't those Daigo's men? Weren't they Daigo's men themselves, or were they different samurai? Because they get taken, and then that's when Mutsu notices that they have the plague going on. And then Tahomaru is standing in front of the shrine of his family, which that shot of Tahomaru with the symbol of their clan on his forehead looks like the X that Daigo has. It looks a lot like it. It really does. Mm-hmm. And even now, they've had the slice on their eye, and then the slice that Hyakkimaru gave him again makes it kind of look like a different X, a sideways X like his dad. But I want to know, what was Tahomaru thinking in the Hall of Hell with the demons? Because he saw that demon. What was he thinking? But he seems pretty determined that he's not going to let his people suffer, and to do that, they have to kill Hyakkimaru. The mom is frustrating sometimes because she acknowledges that Hyakkimaru is like a child that just wants his toy back. Although, equating your body and humanity to a toy, I mean, it's a little different. It's a little more high stakes than that. But she's getting the point across that he's stubborn. And she's like, you know, the wife of a lord or the mother of children, if I didn't have to be both, it would be a lot simpler. And I'm like, girl, I get you want to be the wife of Daigo, and he does care about you somewhat, but he's also kind of an asshole, so I would choose my kids over Daigo, if I'm being real. I would choose my kids over Daigo in this instance. I think you're justified in that. But she says here, he is turning himself into an incarnation of Asura for the sake of Daigo. I don't know what Asura is. Asura is a demon, maybe? In Hindu and Buddhism, Asura refers to a class of beings described as a demigod or titan, as powerful, power-seeking, and sometimes antagonistic to the gods. Oh, okay, so kind of like a demon. Okay. Interesting. So she's basically like, my son is turning himself into a demon for the sake of his dad. Which is sad. And she's not happy about it. And she's like, what do I do? I would go after your kids, girl. I'd say forget Daigo. She's like, I wouldn't have been cursed in my helplessness. Her helplessness and her lack of doing things is her biggest weakness, because she doesn't commit to doing something. She did earlier, to be fair. She did before commit to going out to the battlefield, and it didn't do much. So I could see why she'd be hesitant. But I feel like I want her to have just a little bit more resolve, but I get she's kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. Again, a lot of these characters, I have things I wish they would do, but they won't do them. So Hyakkimaru gets upset at this rando guy that's like, you should turn back. There's a war going on. Don't get involved. And Dororo is like, quit being scary and scaring that guy. We should probably turn back. And Dororo finally gets Hyakkimaru's, attention when she says that she's not going. And that gets Hyakkimaru talking. And I was like, oh, good. And Hyakkimaru was like, why shouldn't I go get it? They were the ones that took my body. And Dororo's like, well, it's just, I don't want you to become someone else. I don't want you to become a demon. I wish Dororo would be a little bit more specific and just say, I don't want you to become a demon by killing. That's what I've been trying to not tell you to do the whole damn time. And I feel like Dororo's going to eventually say it, but I wish that she'd said it this episode instead of waiting. And Dororo does say that she's scared. And Hyakkimaru's like, why would I not be me? And Hyakkimaru just doesn't get it. And that's when he says, I want to touch with my hands and I want to see with my eyes. I want to be able to feel you and see you. And Dororo's like, well, damn it. Dororo's like, that's a real good reason. And I can't argue with that reason. But I wish that Dororo had just said, I don't want you to become a demon in the process of doing it. And maybe we should think things over just a little bit more before we walk into this. But Dororo's also a kid and doesn't quite have the nuance or the maturity to get there. So I get it. I understand why Dororo is not saying the things they need to say, because they are a literal child. So I get it. It's just hard. So then there was this fire scene, and this whole scene by the fire, it was so ominous. It's like, you might as well have said things are going to go bad. This is the last time the three of us are going to be together. When you only have 4 episodes left, which now just 3, it's like, But they talk about how the 2 of them have been together, and then Lord Daigo shows up. This whole scene of the dead in the cell, and Daigo's like, oh, you 2 lived the longest, come with me, was so messed up. This stuff was like, it was levels of the Holocaust terrifying. It was awful. And I was like, oh. But Daigo goes in there, and I don't blame them for immediately jumping at him to bite him and trying to stab him. And he says, I'm not your enemy. And then he looks at him and says, I brought you here to train with my son. And it is wild. He doesn't have the X on his forehead then. I guess he does. I guess he kind of does. But yeah, and he just trains them to be, they're going to stay here and train with you from now on. And of course, Tahomaru is so excited. And the thing about it is Tahomaru is so innocent and excited, but he has no clue the hells that those two have been through. And I get it. I get why Mutsu and Hyogo would be loyal to Daigo. He technically, even though he may have inadvertently caused them to be in that situation, he did get them out of it. So otherwise they would be dead. And they got to be with Tahomaru. So you get their loyalty, right? And that's what this series does. It makes you understand why the characters are loyal and the way that they are with the people that they are. But it's so frustrating because you're like, if only. And that's like the big thing, if only with this series. So anyway, Biwamaru is interesting. We see Biwamaru for a hot second. He's taking it all in. He's taking in the two warring clans that are fighting one another. I feel like Biwamaru, I don't know if Biwamaru is going to show up to talk with Hyakkimaru beforehand. Hyakkimaru hasn't really listened to Biwamaru beforehand, but if anybody were to talk about the problems of what Hyakkimaru is doing and express it in a way that Dororo has not been able to express it, it would probably be Biwamaru, but I don't know if that's going to happen or not. I don't know if that's going to happen, but it would be. I think it would be. Anyway, I don't know what Biwamaru is going to do, but I feel like they are going to have they're going to have a part in this somehow. I don't know if they're going to get Dororo out. I don't know if Biwamaru will talk with Hyakkimaru. That's what I'm contemplating, because I don't think Hyakkimaru will listen. But I think Biwamaru could phrase what Dororo has been trying to say in a way that Hyakkimaru will understand. Or Biwamaru could be like, I really want nothing to do with you, Hyakkimaru. You're kind of a lost cause, and go and try to save Dororo. Or do both. I don't know. I don't know what Biwamaru's role is going to be in all of this. But I do know them going to the mass grave and looking down where Daigo's clan has just been tossing people into the grave is terrifying. To be honest, with the animation, there are some moments in this series, especially in this latter half, that are so terrifying in concept alone. But I feel like the animation, like in the pit, they kind of just skirt over it. They don't really draw a lot of attention to the pit of corpses. And it kind of looks a little hokey with the animation. They could have really made that look scary. Same with when Hyugo and Mutsu are in prison. They could have made that look absolutely jaw-droppingly horrifying. But the animation budget is a little wonky in this episode at places. But Hyakkimaru looks down into the pit and sees that there's lots of demonic energies, like little clusters of negative spirits all gathering. And Hyakkimaru's like, well, they're not demons I can kill, but they could form into something. So we'll see how that goes. And then Tahomaru and them just show up. They just show up. I was not ready for them just to show up and be there. I was not ready for that. I was like, oh, we're going to have, nope, they're right there. And the 3-on-1 is so not fair. And Hyakkimaru tells Dororo to stand back. And that's when Dororo says, he's your little brother. And Hyakkimaru was like, no, he called me a demon. How is he my brother? And I can't blame Hyakkimaru for thinking that. Like, what kind of brother would call me a demon? But I'm like, is that going to come back with Dororo later on? I don't know. So the good thing is, Tahomaru does not seem to be a demon yet. He seems like he's pretty, like he's got this energy where he's okay. There's nothing demonic about him. And the sword he has just got regular energy to him, which is so fascinating. But I hate it. I get why Hyakkimaru does not kill Hyogo or Mutsu. To be fair, he doesn't kill them. And if he didn't chop off their arms, they would have killed him. So I get why he did it, but it sucks. And Dororo's sad because he doesn't want to see Hyakkimaru hurting humans because that's going to make him more like a demon. And Hyakkimaru, but otherwise Hyakkimaru is going to die because they're going to try to kill him. So Dororo's just stuck there crying, and it's really freaking sad. And then him and Tahomaru fight, and he manages to cut Tahomaru, he cuts him right above his eye. And I wanted to get that because, again, Tahomaru nearly took out Hyakkimaru's eye, and instead he nearly took out his. And now it's made, when he looks at him, it's made this like, what, I want to see what it looks like. It does look like an X almost. It's almost an X, like Daigo's. Almost. But just a little bit. And so Tahomaru's like, I'm going to kill you if it's the last thing I do. To be fair to Hyakkimaru, if someone told me I was a demon and they were going to kill me if it was the last thing that they were going to do, I'd probably defend myself. I probably would. Which sucks, right? What sucks the most, though, is the horse. Midoro. The guy got on her, and then he lit a bomb, and then they shot arrows in her ass and made her into a grenade. So unnecessary. You couldn't have taken an ugly-ass horse and did that with. You had to do it with Midoro. And then they take Dororo. So this guy, whatever his name may be, the spy, he says that Daigo ordered him to look after him. And so Daigo says Tahomaru will succeed me, so I need to make sure that he's safely back at home. Well, we'll see about that. We'll see about that. I don't know. And you could view Daigo as being a caring father in that moment, being like, I want to make sure my son is safe. And knowing that his son's super, super, stubborn. And I guess this guy knew that too, because he had the tranquilizing darts with him to stop him. But again, Daigo has this care towards his wife and son. But then there's this other part of Daigo that just ignores the fact that this is kind of all his fault. And he should probably take responsibility for it. And instead he's like, I'm going to blame everybody else. And it's like, ugh. So they take him back, and then they leave Hyogo's hand, or Mutsu's hand, take Dororo with them, and they're going to use Dororo as bait. Now, Mutsu says it's cowardly to use the helpless, and this guy's like, you guys have no right to talk at all. And so they all decide to go back, and then Hyakkimaru, as it starts, of course it starts raining. Of course it does. As he's in the pit trying to find Dororo. What I think is interesting is that as he's trying to crawl out of the pit, this horse, you have these two beings. You have Hyakkimaru, who is wanting vengeance and to get back with their loved one. And you have Midoro, this horse, who wants vengeance and just got separated from its loved one, its colt. And it's like, that's why I feel Hyakkimaru and this horse are going to team up to get out of there, which would be interesting because Hyakkimaru has killed all these demons. If he teams up with one to get out of the pit, and then if Tahomaru teams up with that evil demon at the end, it's like the parallels, the mirrors, the drama. But I don't know. I don't know if Tahomaru is going to make a deal with the devil. I don't know if Hyakkimaru is going to ride out on this demon horse. I don't know any of these things. All I know is that we only have 3 episodes left. Dororo's been taken away, and Hyakkimaru has got to get out of that pit to go find them. So, yeah. So anyway, I'm curious to see what we're going to get. I am curious to see what you all think about this episode and about your commentary down below. But I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back next time, and we'll see what happens with Dororo episode 22. And I'll see you then. Bye!